Welcome back to The Manual, the podcast where we talk about the stuff most men's podcasts are too afraid to touch. Today's episode is going to be wild, raw, and real. Buckle up. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to The Manual. We're super glad that you're joining us for this, what we consider a very important conversation about the nice guy. I was going to say the Mr. Nice Guy.
The Mr. Nice Guy.
We've gone back and forth on what do we call this series? By the time this comes out, it will have a name or a title. The proposed title was Killing the Nice Guy, but I think it's more appropriate to call it something of transforming the nice guy or learning to work with the nice guy, which is a lame title. But today we're talking about, in this series, the origin story. That the nice guy, if this is the archetype you find yourself living out of, or the malformed identity that you find yourself living out of, started somewhere. It wasn't born, it was crafted, especially crafted in your early life as a boy. So we want to go back there, offer some questions, some ideas, some concepts, and then some practical application of how you can start to develop your understanding of the nice guy syndrome, like we talked about last week, in your life. This is going to be a series, 12 or 13-week series. So we encourage you to watch these in order because each one builds on the last. You certainly can cherry pick if you find yourself watching a video or listening to an episode somewhere along the process. Go back and start at the beginning and follow along all the way through, so that you understand how each step builds on one another, especially if the episode you watch, wherever it is in the series, resonates deeply with you, because we might be speaking to you. So here's where I want to start today. Have you ever asked yourself why you're so agreeable? Why you avoid conflict? Why you suppress what you really think or feel? It didn't just happen. Today, we're going back to where it all started, the origin story of the nice guy. Nick, you and I were just talking before we started this, that if you say coping identity, or the way I found myself more often operating, is the other archetype that Dr. Robert Glover talks about, and that's the macho jerk. You have found yourself operating more out of the nice guy syndrome. So we're going to use our own stories and experiences a lot through the process of each of these discussions, talking about our individual experiences growing up, our childhood experiences, our experiences as young adults, and then into adulthood. But we're also going to talk about our relationship. You and I have been working closely together, linking arms as we've built the Freedom Group over the past several years.
Uncomfortably close.
These ways of relating have emerged in the context of our relationship. And I would say from my standpoint that it's been both healing as well as created friction in how I show up to the world around me. And it's been a really great mirror or reflection of the way that I impact people as I show up, both in my strengths as well as in the weaknesses of that. And I would go so far as to say that working closely with you has helped refine me closer to who I actually am, or transform the malformed parts of me closer to who I actually am, because we push on each other, because there is that honest reflection that each of the virtues we're going to talk about in the coming weeks kind of, I think, at different times have been expressed in the context of a relationship. So I just want to start there. And because we're talking through the lens of the nice guy, and that's the role you have found yourself playing in, we're gonna lean heavily on your story and your experience to be able to draw out these themes and concepts. But I also want to illuminate, if a guy doesn't find himself in the nice guy syndrome, finds himself in the macho jerk syndrome, if you will, to be able to lean that direction as well as we go through this. I want to start where this begins. You weren't born this way, you became this way. So I want to hear from you, Nick. What does this look like in identifying this or connecting? Where did this all start for you in terms of understanding through this lens of the nice guy syndrome? That's me. And then as you've done the story work and the process of uncovering more of your story, and how does that emerge in your reality today? Yeah, how did that all progress for you?
Yeah, I'd say generally, and I don't know what percentage, but I would say a large percentage of guys listening to this and guys out there, especially guys in the church, but not just that, identify with the nice guy. And ultimately, this pattern, this nice guy pattern, is formed early on in life as a survival strategy. We all, I mean, one of the core needs, legitimate needs of any child is security, is to feel safe. And so the nice guy, the boy, learns to do that, not just because he's manipulative or he's necessarily weak, but he learns some strategies in order to stay safe, loved, and at least being perceived to be accepted. So early emotional environment. What's the home he grew up in? It's really important, as we're talking about the origin story, guys, to look at your family dynamics. Origin of family is a big deal. So oftentimes the child grew up in a home that maybe, even if it wasn't explicitly this, it felt that love was conditional. If I do this, then I will be loved. At least he perceived that for various reasons. Another thing that he grew up in is conflict feels unsafe. Many of our parents did not fight cleanly, didn't know how to fight well. I love my dad, but he carried a lot of anger. I say, he would say, you know, growing up, he would always say that Reds are alcoholics. That was the sentence I lived under growing up. Reds are alcoholics. I think deeper than that, though, he had like a rageaholic. And so you could never really bring something up because it never was really safe. You never knew when. I love you, Dad. I doubt you're listening to this, but when Mike Red would blow up. He grew up in a home where expressing anger or really needs get maybe punished or really ignored or even shamed. So I would learn, well, you just don't express needs, or you don't express wants. And again, we've talked about this in times past, but one of the skills and muscles a nice guy needs to exercise is learning how to express what he wants. Why? Because of this, because he learned growing up that it's not okay and it's not safe. And so in order to experience, and this is all, so much of it is experiencing security and safety, you only experience that when you express your need or a desire and you realize, hey, wow, I'm not gonna die. And oftentimes, just one more piece around the family and dynamic and the environment is parents are often emotionally unavailable or volatile, as I was talking about. Like, you never knew when Mike Red was going to blow up, or they were stressed. And as an adult, as I look back, I'm like, I get it. I look back at, and there's a lot of compassion and understanding for my parents, but there's not for the boy within. The boy within, this nice guy who's still kind of a boy caught. We do a lot of inner child work in phase 2 in our system. He hasn't matured. He's stuck in that kind of home environment. So if you have unavailable or unattuned, we've talked about it. I think it was from The Body Keeps the Score, Joe, where you talked about how resilience, the roots of resilience, are basically being found and seen in the eyes and heart of another who's emotionally attuned with us. The boy didn't receive that, and so the child learns if I'm easy, if I am agreeable, if I'm helpful. I don't know if I'll feel safe, but at least I won't get rejected. And so it's a coping mechanism, survival strategy that we learn from a young age.
Yeah. As I reflect on my own life, the nice guy emerges for me when I am in the context of older men. I play the role of the nice guy when I'm with mentor figures or people older than me. And I find myself really in that mode, seeking approval. Like, it is very clear for me as like if I'm looking honestly at myself, is like I am performing as the nice guy for the motivation of approval. So I resonate a lot with what you just said. With peers, I'm either myself or I'm the macho jerk.
Yeah.
And with people younger than me, that I'm the ringleader, I'm the driver, I'm the captain of the ship. And you're coming with me or I'll kick you off, but the nice guy really comes out strong. And I feel the shift in the context of older men in my life. And for me too, I think the reflection for me is the role that my dad played. Pretty emotionally distant, unavailable, pretty quiet with his felt opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very clear line of respect, and how respected he felt was the standard. And so performance or violation of that was met with significant anger or reaction. So I think in this vein of starting to look back at your past or your history, notice how you operate today. Ask yourself, where does the nice guy come out? If there's a macho jerk performance in me, where does that emerge? And then ask yourself, can you remember a moment as a kid when you felt like your needs didn't matter, or like being you was somehow wrong? Maybe it was a mistake you made that was responded to harshly. Maybe it was a series of events. Maybe, like you just described, Nick, a general culture
Yeah.
or environment that was
Yeah.
persistent, that was ever present. So
Yeah.
these can be acute memories, acute meaning like a 1 or 2 time thing, or they can be chronic realities, like
Mm-hmm.
conditions of the environment that you were in, pretty emotionally unavailable. I mean, I won't reiterate everything that you just laid out there, but most of what you just laid out there was like a chronic reality, a long extending years and years of this is the way that we operate as a family, as a community, the people that you engaged outside of. And I think that was also an important element of my own reflection, is that it wasn't just my family that operated that way. Generally, like as I think of the other male figures in my friends' families, they all were pretty similar. They were all pretty stoic, emotionally unavailable,
Yep.
non-attuned,
Yep.
and my friends were pretty similar to me, and different in the ways that they coped with that reality, but similar in terms of the environment that they were growing up in, and the work or lack thereof that they were doing to try to figure out how to gain that approval, to figure out how to know who they were and grow into their identity, and grappling with that reality. I want to talk a little bit about the childhood wound, and you talked about that connection already. We can go deeper in there. The childhood wound, either again through a acute event, one really sort of event that occurred that's hardwired into, you could go back and relive it, if you thought back to that,
Mm-hmm.
or that chronic condition of the environment you grew up in, and the internal vows that we make and then hold on to into our adult life that don't serve us well. So Nick, could you define the childhood wound and then bring us a little bit deeper into vows? Because I know this is an area that you've spent a lot of time thinking about and doing work in, both for yourself as well as with other men.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all, it looks different in every family. So I'll share a little bit of my experience. And both these vows are formed, and the vow of, I won't ask for help, or I'll just handle it all, or for me, I will be the glue of the family, was a vow I made. These vows are made as like self-protection, as armor, if you will, to protect us from the wounds. And the wounds, oftentimes, he'll feel powerless. He'll feel like a victim. He'll feel trapped. So whether things that I did or observed, so whether it's my own trauma or watching somebody else go through some stuff. So me, I observed my brother, who was 9 years older than me, watch how he reacted to my dad. My brother, apparently, I don't remember this, but I do remember moments where apparently he had like he went to like behavioral discipline school, something like that, where I remember one moment, my girls are always asking me for stories of when I was a little kid. And I have a hard time remembering stories, but I was going to the gym the other day with them, taking them to martial arts, and they asked for another story. I'm like, okay, what's a story? And this story popped up, this memory popped up. I was probably 5, 6, and Jacob, 9 years older than me, so he's probably 14 or 15, he runs away from the house. And what does that mean for a 14 or 15-year-old kid to run away from the house? But it had been a couple hours. It was after dinner. It was like 9 o'clock at night. It was nighttime. So I don't know, 9 or 10. And I know it was after my bedtime, and he was gone and he wasn't coming back. And so me and my three sisters, one younger and then two older, the memory is we were praying a rosary because we were scared. Like, Jacob's gone. He left, and it was his response to my dad's anger was very different from my response to my dad's anger. Part of his personality, temperament. I think there's certain people that might be more disposed to playing the role that I played, which is more, I'm going to be the glue to the family. I'm going to make sure I keep everything together. I'm not going to, ruffle any feathers. And so I watched him. So we're sitting there praying the rosary, and next thing we hear a shattering of a window. And my parents' window shatters, and a rock lands on their bed. And Jacob, and that's in the back of the house, so that's technically 3 stories up. He launches a massive rock through their window and lands on the bed. My mom screams, and we're like just terrified. And so I basically made a vow. I mean, in so many ways, I'm not going to be like my brother. I'm not going to be like my dad. I made a vow that, a belief that expressing anger is dangerous and bad. So what happens? Anger is an emotion that needs to be expressed. For me, I have to express it, but it comes out sideways. It comes out in passive aggression. And this is the same thing with legitimate needs. If we don't get our needs met, they're going to come out sideways. So for me, observing a kind of masculinity gone wrong or anger expressed that causes danger, in those moments, I mean, there's a core wound of fear. Certainly there's a core wound. And just because of my relationship with my brother, he was taking a lot of his crap out on me. I'm a victim. I'm powerless. How do I feel safe? Well, hide, never express, never get in conflict. Because conflict, I could never, quote, win any sort of conflict. And so I tried to feel safe. And this is where a lot of addictions come into play, where when you don't know how to feel safe, when you don't know how to feel secure, when you don't know how to soothe, self-soothe, attune, self-attune, attune with others, when you don't have that, substance comes into play. And when those things came into my life, alcohol and porn in specific, I'm like, whoa, these things work. And so the nice guy has a lot of hidden addictions. And the nice guy, golly, he wears the mask. And I think it shows up so much in the Christian world. And I know it did in mine, where I'm just going to be, I'm never going to ask for help. I'm never going to express my needs. Thinking that was some sort of virtue. Never be needy. That's a virtue. And it just led to, a lot of, addictions, because if you don't have the legitimate needs met, you're going to have them met in an illegitimate.
Yeah. What I found myself doing was, in reflection to your own story, was to play the role the majority of the time of seeking approval, not rocking the ship, but then taking what I needed from other places and environments, disregarding other people's boundaries or needs, like I have to have this. And so I think that part of me became the aggressor, where I sensed weakness or vulnerabilities, or, again, and none of this consciously necessarily,
Right.
like, oh, this is what I'm doing. But a lot of the acting out in more peer relationships, I think, was really because it's like, I'm going to get this from you and you're going to give it to me whether you want to or not, right? And I think that I mean, much of my experience in various arenas, both in peer context, the difference between the way I showed up to school, the way I showed up to youth group, the way I showed up in my family versus other families, etc., friends versus family, was kind of a distinct experience of a duality of personhood. I am this way in this environment, and I am this way in this environment, and neither of them was me.
Yeah.
I think, just to define childhood wounding, childhood wounds are not always traumatic events or memories, but they always carry deep meaning. Again, whether it's an acute experience or a chronic environment or situation that you found yourself in, culture. that you found yourself in. Examples of this could be a persistent experience of being ignored, like you were the forgotten one, or scolded, that you were constantly in trouble, even if they were small, insignificant failures or even misunderstandings. Constantly being in the state of overwhelm because, like you said, the temperature of the home environment was always escalated or always felt tense. That, what you described, that responsibility for others, that I have to make this okay because nobody else seems to be
Yeah.
doing that.
Or there's this
Nobody else.
codependency with others. Like if you're not okay, I'm not okay. I'm not comfortable with you being uncomfortable or angry or not okay, ultimately.
Right. Like you can't control yourself. So I have to figure out how to control you for you
Right.
so that I can be okay. I
Yep.
have to make you feel better so that I can feel better.
Exactly.
Right. And so then these vows come in. I won't ask for help. I'll handle it all. I'll be the good one. Right. That and the reality is that those oftentimes those vows in an isolated, matured context can be good things, right? Now, I won't ask for help isn't a good thing, but having a level of self-sufficiency is a good thing,
Totally.
right? Not being an emotional puddle that needs the world around you to give you everything you need. There's a level of that is good, right? To be dependable, to be responsible, those are good things. To be able to have the capacity to handle a lot is a good thing, right? But
Totally.
the inner vow out of a place of wounding
Exactly.
drives us off the cliff
That's right.
rather than creating an environment where we can be in control of the car, where others can be safe
Totally.
in the car with us.
I think that distinction is huge. The first time I heard that distinction between like a holy vow and a vow that is made in freedom and an unholy inner vow is what you're just saying right there. An unholy vow is made from a place of fear, of wounding, of I'm not safe, so I will do this, or I will never do this. The same vow, let's say even about, that a husband and wife, this is a common vow that makes publicly, makes in freedom, at least as much as possible in freedom, and in love and in the Holy Spirit is I will love you, honor you, I will never leave you, nor forsake you, right? I'm in this. But a boy at 10 whose parents get divorced, if they make that fear of I will never get divorced, as good as that vow sounds, I'm never going to get that on the surface. Like that sounds like a good vow. Made in fear, it's self-protection. It's a mask. And we need to look like what's undergirding the vow. I just wanted to put a pin in that. It's a really important distinction between holy vows that are made in freedom and like self-reliance is not bad. Self-reliance can be really good. But this ungodly, fear-based, I have to do it all self-reliance, it's all on me, that is the type of self-reliance that will lead to ultimately death and just crushing you and I. It's a mask.
Yep. So here's some questions to think about. What internal promises did you make as a kid that shaped you? Do those still show up in your relationships today, and how?
Mm-hmm.
I'd also add to that, Nick, kind of what you said is look at the vows that you've made, either to people in your life or to yourself, and what's the foundation or bedrock of that vow? Is it out of a place of self-protection or need for safety, or were they vows that are made in love, in capacity, that I have the capacity to care for others, and so I vow to never leave, right? To be seen and experienced as a protector, right? That the people in my care would experience the capacity to be themselves or to show up as they are, and that I can hold that for them. We learn to wear masks, right? That's another aspect or a way of explaining this reality in your origin story. And so we build a persona in order to experience or feel safe, right? And these can be things like the helper, the peacemaker, the strong or silent type, the performer. Nick, you said the glue, right? And as I reflect on my own story, to put mine in there, certainly at times I found myself operating as the performer. Other times I found myself operating as the silent type. When I would go to youth group, I would be performant. I would be loud and boisterous and
Yeah.
trying to be the loudest person in the room. And then I would go to school And there would be days when I was in high school that I wouldn't say a single word, that I was completely shut down. That saying a word felt like a giant risk. And so I would just stay quiet. And so there isn't necessarily, I just want to give that sort of condition of my own experience to say that you might not find yourself being just one type, that in different environments, in order to find safety, you might find yourself adapting to that environment. What does this require of me? Okay, I'll play that role, right? And every mask has a cost.
Yep.
Right? You win approval, but you lose identity. You give away who you are. And you forget who you actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So the question we'd ask you here is, what mask or masks have you been wearing the longest? Where do they emerge? What environments draw them out? Maybe it's in your marriage relationship or with your girlfriend. Maybe it's with your buddies and your guys that you just find yourself, you get around the buddies and all of a sudden you become this caricature, right? What are those masks that you find yourself putting on? There are some core fears that drive the nice guy. The fear of abandonment. If I'm not good, they'll leave. Fear of conflict. If I speak up, everything will explode.
Yeah.
Fear of rejection. If I'm honest, I'll be judged.
Yeah. These
fears are major drivers in young adult or adulthood, and they destroy things. This is usually the time of our lives where we find ourselves up against it, right? Which is either a cross that we don't desire to carry, and so then we try to remove those relationships from our life, or we try to, give in to loneliness or isolation because I don't want to have to deal with that. So I'll just do whatever. I'll craft a reality for me, run to video games, run to numbing, run to isolation, live by myself, etc. Because I'm just not the type of person that can deal with others, or whatever those things that we start to construct a false environment to protect ourselves from our false selves or false self, or we find it as an opportunity. Like this is the opportunity. This relationship, this person, this culture around me is drawing out of me the masks, the wounds, the inner vows that I've long carried. And both you and I, Nick, have experienced environments where it's like such a breath of fresh air. Like, thank God that there are other men, or that in our relationships with our now wives, that can see us in this kind of way and we can't run.
Right.
Where we're forced to face the reality of those young parts of us so that we can deal with them, right? So which of these fears runs the show in your life? Which of these fears runs the show in your life? Nick, you talked about approval being an incredibly important driver or motivation for the nice guy. I want you to add on anything that I just laid out in those two earlier things, but also talk about the role that approval plays or motivates us to develop these false identities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, praise God, as you're saying, just those moments when the masks crack and those that are close to us can see in and can see the true self. Like, that's a severe mercy. And I just think so often, especially in the church, but not even in the church, just in education, in the world, like the nice guy is reinforced because the nice guy is approved of. People like the yes guy. People like the guy that says yes to them. And oftentimes the nice guy, no is not in his vocabulary. And so the masks, when they work, right? They work to get approval, for people to like them. And we say this a lot of times too. Like, drugs work. Behavioral drugs, porn and masturbation works. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. The nice guy works. It gets you in some capacities, but it just undermines because it's not you. People aren't loving the real you. People aren't seeing the real you. So this false self is being elevated. These masks are being celebrated, which is why it's so deceptive. But undergirding all of this, which is why I love we're talking about it, is just this guy crying out for somebody to actually see me. And so, yeah, the fears that are driving, I love what you highlighted, this fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of rejection. And so much of these things are a fruit of, especially with rejection. The nice guy pushes other people away from fear of rejection. And so what he's actually doing is he's rejecting himself first too. It's a lot of self-rejection, self-critical that'll just come out on other people. And when we live in these fears, they drive our behavior. And I think last thing I just want to just highlight again is if you look at like the nice guy behaviors on paper, like what somebody's doing, it's like, yeah, this guy's probably a virtuous guy. He's serving all the ways he should be serving. He's, working, the hours he's supposed to be working. He's caring for his family. I mean, at least on the surface, but inside, and hopefully if you're listening to this, you're like, oh shit, that's me. He's dying inside. And he knows the behaviors are from the false self, are birthed out of fear of if I say something, I'm going to get hurt, or fear of if I have conflict, I'm going to get rejected. I will. And it's like the amygdala is so powerful, and like literally fear, like the core wound of fear, like the core lie of fear. It used to make sense. If you're walking in the Serengeti or the sub-Saharan desert and a saber-toothed tiger comes at you, your brain thinks, I'm going to die. And it releases performance-enhancing drugs into your body and you run. Now the fear is it's the same chemicals flowing through your body, and the thought is, I'm going to die. If I speak up, I will die.
Yep.
If I say something, I'll be abandoned. If I'm not good, they'll leave. And when you have somebody in your life where you can start to be honest, you can start to like put down the armor and they can start seeing you for who you really are. We start pushing into these vows by going the opposite, to agere contra, to go against, and to start choosing, opposite things. So what are the behavioral patterns in adulthood? What are the approval loops? People pleasing, over functioning, avoiding your needs, downplaying pain. Okay, if you say yes all the time, practice saying no. Practice standing up for yourself. Practice Sabbath. I think the nice guy has a really hard time slowing down and not just saying yes and meeting everyone else's needs and overworking. And he avoids his own. Start asking, and again, I think we've talked about this before, but don't even ask, like, is this a need or is this a want? Practice asking for what you want. Vocalize an opinion and feel the temperature rise within you and the fear elevate and the tension in your veins start to expand, and welcome it and just vocalize an opinion. Be the first to do it too. Share an opinion and then just be honest about, like, don't downplay pain, acknowledge what you're experiencing and go against these patterns that are formed. So a lot of the integration of what are we calling this, series? Is it killing the nice guy? I don't think, as you said, Joe, that's it. It's integrating, it's leading, it's transforming him. And we do it by like becoming aware of where my story, what in my story is showing up now? How do I have compassion on that little boy within me? Really, it is that. And saying, hey, we got this. And let's start standing up for ourselves so that I can lay down my life. Because if we bypass that part, then it's like, well, it's a false laying down of life that doesn't lead to life and fruit in the kingdom.
Yep. Yeah. And I would say, again, as a way of reflection in my own story, that the performance of the macho jerk is aimed at the same thing. That well, if this environment won't give me what I need, I'll just take it. And I'll force others, right? When I think of climbing up the ladder in any institution, it's pretty useful to be a macho jerk, right? You think of like the archetype of the hotshot lawyer,
totally,
right? The bulldozer personality that's like, get out of my way, I'm going. That tends to be reinforced as well in performance environments, right? To take what you want, to take what you need. And in order to come back into your identity, the opposite, well, I don't want to say the total opposite of what you just said, learning to say yes to others, learning to be sensitive, But developing capacity and skill is, as the macho jerk, is learning to see others. What is my impact on others' behaviors? Inviting other people to communicate to you how they're perceiving you, right? Are you bulldozing? And
Mm-hmm.
give people permission. And Nick, I certainly haven't done this perfectly, but your and I's relationship, I've tried to do that. Like, I need you to push back when I'm bulldozing because I don't want to do that. And I want to learn how to not do that, but I do that, right? When I see some place that we should go, the motivation might be really good and pure, but the performance or how I show up to it isn't. And it has an effect on others. And
Mm-hmm.
I want and need people in my life that know me well enough and see me clearly enough that can say, that came off like blank. Right? And so learning as the macho jerk, learning to say, I'm sorry. Learning to make amends, learning to be honest, because that buildup, that experience for me drives a wedge in relationship and creates in a very similar way the same kind of avoidance, right? Like, I'll just avoid the occasion. I'll try to then sneak around and not have people notice me bulldozing, even though I still bulldoze, right? I'll still try to get my needs met, but I'll do it in a way that's imperceptible to the other person and try to manipulate the environment to be able to have what I need, which becomes more damaging, not less damaging, both to me and to the people that I live with, that are
Yeah.
around me, that I have a relationship with. So, I mean, you talked about in one of your earliest experiences of AA, hearing someone say, I don't have an addiction to alcohol, I have an approval addiction.
Yeah.
That this, again, plays out in the world around us, certainly, but in our own world, that this drive for approval. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, and we'll land the plane then here, is, Nick, you said earlier that limbic system in our brain, the amygdala, that fight or flight motivation, for the young boy, that familial environment was the lion. And so part of compassion is realizing that he needed to do that then, and it's no longer helpful now, right? He needed to perform like that in order to be safe and okay. And as an adult, it needs to change.
Yeah.
Right? So having compassion that the lions in the boy's life required him to develop a maladaption, just in the same way that you have compassion, like you said, Nick, and looking at your family and seeing what all they had to deal with and saying, like, I get it. We also have to look at that young part of us and say, I get it.
Right.
That was a real lion.
Right.
Because we are so wired for intimacy and connection that it is in some ways experienced internally in the very fabric of our being, in our neurons, as life or death. In the same way that need for safety would rear its ugly head in the Serengeti desert
Mm-hmm.
when we face a physical foe, right? So our encouragement for you is to write your origin story. If you're here, if you're resonating with this, if this is speaking something to you that you know is there, take the time for reflection. Like you said, both of us, the macho jerk and the nice guy, avoid. So slowing down long enough to reflect will be difficult, but take the time to do it. Push yourself to be able to get into the uncomfortable feeling and to welcome it, to not flee from it. So ask yourself, this prompt of reflection is, when I look back at my life, when do I first remember deciding it wasn't safe to be fully myself? No edits, no shame, just honesty. Invite yourself to bring that story to others, to people that can hold that for you. That this is something you're learning about yourself, and bring yourself there to experience it. Other questions to think about for journaling or to go into the origin story: what early memory or memories or environments stand out when you think about hiding, suppressing, or performing? What internal promise do you think you made as a kid? What mask do you see yourself wearing the most today? Which of the three fears that we talked about earlier hits you hardest? And how has the nice guy or the macho jerk identity helped you? How has it served you? Like Nick was talking earlier, that these work and that's why we operate in them. And as an adult now, how has it hurt you? How is it hurting you today?
Yeah. Yeah.
The nice guy didn't just show up one day. He wasn't born as a part of your nature. He was built, he was fashioned over time. But now it's time to start dismantling him and reclaiming the man underneath, your true self. In the next episode, we'll talk about how you can rebuild this, starting with the father of all the masculine virtues, responsibility.
Come on.
Our calls to action today is share your origin story with someone. If getting some more reflection, some people looking at this, we encourage you to check out a freedom group. Again, like Nick said, we do a ton of story work, inner child work in phase 2 of our process, especially if acting out with porn or masturbation or other addictions is part of your story. It's a great place to be able to do that work. If you're not looking for that level of support, our low-ticket freedom community is a great place. We put out courses like the Nice Guy course and other courses to be able to help you have an on-demand place to be able to learn more about this, to be able to do the deep reflection, and to have a big community of men that are all doing it together. We have a freedom retreat coming up May 15th and 16th in the Twin Cities. If that's something you're interested in, shoot us a message. We'll have practical ways to be able to sign up for that soon. But just so that you're aware that that's coming up, check that out. And we'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel, leave a review, comment if this hit home, post the questions you have below. And again, next week, we'll be discussing responsibility, the father of all masculine virtues. We'll see you then. Peace.